Hello and welcome Pixels to my fourth part of this vegetation shroom tree tutorial. This time is a little premiere because I will work with the new Blender 2.8 version and will show you my experiences with the texture painting tool in Blender, what is probably new, what is different from Blender 2.7.9. And yes, I will switch between Photoshop and Blender and give you my experiences, and you can watch me and maybe learn as well something new what is going on in Blender 2.8. I'm really excited about this. So first I will give you a little overview what I will do this time. I will start to export the UV layout to get a PNG. I will import this PNG to Photoshop and set some basic colors. And then I will switch back to Blender and start drawing details and all what we need for this shroom tree. So I will fasten up some parts of this video tutorial because watching live how much time I will put into this texture is not very interesting, and I will give you just the main focus, what is really necessary to draw and paint a texture in Blender or in Photoshop. But before we start, I want to honor our Patreons. So thank you very much to Simon Sineda, David Hensel, Erich Gangl, Melina Brunner, Robert Hartl, Reinhard Bauer and Maximilian Heinle. Thank you so much for your support. If you are interested to become a patron as well, just watch the link in the description below. But now let's start and head into Blender 2.8. Okay, back in Blender 2.8. What is new? Okay, we see now for sure there's a new image, but I've already loaded my scene for the shroom tree. So just to give you a little information about this, I have the spacebar on the first button on my pen. But Blender is working a little bit different than Photoshop, so I will need to have here the middle mouse button to get this. So now I can rotate my object and zoom and switch, and with shift middle mouse button we can move it like with the mouse. Yes, but I will show you. So you see now that we have here as well different view panels, and this is the 3D view. It is as well like in Blender 2.8, and we have selected here currently the image editor. We don't need this one, so let's switch to UV editor, and you see now that we have all the UVs laid out perfectly. We did this in the last episode. So if you missed that, check it out. The link is in the description below or in the note up here now. Yes, what is necessary for texture painting? Let's go to object mode, and you see here in the top side that we have different workbenches. So we have, for example, default, or we can go to scripting or UV editing, whatever, video editing as well. But you can always switch back to default. So this is some prepared logic with the view panels. But you have here plus, and I go to general and want to go and will select texture paint. And this is now split into two parts. We have for sure here the UV editor, and here is the 3D panel. And you see now that the texture, there's no texture assigned right now yet, and we get this purple ugly color here, and this is because there's no texture selected. So what we can do to assign a texture, you see here on the property panel that we are currently in the draw mode, and you see that there's no texture assigned right now, and we just hit this plus button to assign a new base color, and you can give it a name. Give it a name, then we will go with a 2K texture because I guess that this tree will be pretty big, and We want a good resolution on this tree, so 2K should be okay. And you can select as well a color. So I want to give the base color to the mesh in Photoshop, so I will do this later. So I will just go with a white color, and this should be okay. So alpha is activated as well, this is good, and just press OK. So we have now assigned this texture here, this new texture 2K. So in the UV panel we don't have a texture assigned yet, so we need to find it. Usually in 2.79 there was this panel on the bottom side, but now it is on the top side, and you see that we can as well select the image, and yeah, here is the texture we created before, and I will just select it, and yes, it is as well in the same like in Blender 2.79, and we can just draw on this texture or here in the 3D view. This is very important that we have now assigned the correct texture in the 3D view and in the UV editor. The next step is to assign a base color to my UV islands, and for me it is easier to do this in Photoshop, so I will save the texture now and switch to Photoshop, assign a color, and then I go back to Blender and painting details there. So I will save now the texture. Just click here on image. You see that there is an unsaved image, and press save as. Okay, now select the folder where you want to save your image. I have it here in vegetation Blender 2.8, and this is totally fine. The name is as well correct, and with PNG. This is good. So save this image. And the second part is I need the UV layout. So the best to do this is I just switch back here to default, and now I'm again in my modeling view and go to with tabulator to edit mode, and yes, here's as well my UV grid. And now this is pretty similar. Go to UV, export UV layout, and there's as well the correct folder, and the only thing is that I will call this Shroom Tree UV, export UV. And now we have exported the image and the UV layout and can switch to Photoshop now. So I will give you now my folder, and you see that we have our Blender file, we have our texture and our UV layout. And I will just drag and drop the texture to Photoshop. And for sure we don't have a texture information, so this is completely white yet. But I will export as well the UV layout, and we see now that we have a little mistake because there's a transparent color between our UV islands. So I go switch back to Blender, UV, export layout, and select the fill opacity to 0. This was wrong. It's my bad, and export this again. Photoshop, and save this. Delete this, and now we have a very good grid imported to Photoshop. The next step is to give the UV islands a particular color, so that we have a base color, and so we can use this base color in Blender as well. So I will import the concept I did before I started modeling, and so we can pick up all the colors of this concept and bring it to our texture. So let's import the concept to Photoshop, and yeah, for sure, I need to change my first button on the pen, because the middle mouse button is not working in Photoshop for me. So I will just give it the space bar again. So this is the space bar in Photoshop is the hand tool, and the hand tool can move your view panel. And it's, for me, it is easier to have the hand tool on the first button, so I can directly move with my pen. This is just my setting. But yes, I will create a new layer and name this tree trunk. Then another layer which is called shrooms, and go to my concept, pick the color of this tree trunk, and go to my correct layer, and will now fill all the UV islands which are tree trunks. The easiest way for me is to use the lasso tool. For sure, you can now start to painting your UV island with the brush tool, but I think it's easier to work with the lasso tool. The only thing is we need to switch the color to the background, so we can use Alt Delete, so we can use Control Delete to fill a selection. And this is my working pipeline. So the first one is this image. I will just give it a little more space than the actual UVs, so that there is no color bleeding. Color bleeding means if you can see some pixels from the background, which are not belong to the actual texture, but if you exactly draw on this, if you exactly draw on the outer UVs, then there is a possibility that you can see some color bleeding here, and this is not beautiful. So I give it some extra space, so that there's no possibility to have some color bleedings. So this is the first trunk. So we have filled now the color for all the tree trunk parts, and here we have only the shroom cups, and this UV space is only for the branch, which is just an image plane, and we have here some transparent stuff as well, but I will not do this right now, maybe after I filled the base color. And now I want to fill the shroom cups. So go here to my concept and select the color, which should be the shroom cup. Go to the next layer and fill it with the wanted color. Okay, I will do or give this image plane just a brush stroke to have a vision where we want to go with this branch. So I will not create a new layer because this is probably the same color, and I will just paint a stroke on this line. What does this mean? So we have here the point where the image plane is sticking to the tree trunk mesh, and this is the end of the image plane. So if we visiting Blender here, you see that this here is the end piece of this branch, and this point in the inside of this mesh is this vertex here. So we can just draw some branches. With a brush, and this is our image plane. So we get very detailed information, texture information about this branch here, and this gives the vegetation prop some more detail, yeah, for sure. Okay, we created now the base colors. So what I want to import to Blender as well are the other colors which are needed for this room tree. So I will just pick up these colors and painted it somewhere where there's some space, where there's no UV island, so I can pretty easily save the colors and pick it up later in Blender. So do we have other materials? Maybe I will give it as well this color, and will be there another color. I will go with this color here as well, this and this one. So we have now all the colors, and I'm pretty happy with the result so far. I will hide now the UV layer, and you see this is really just a basic color. I will as well remove next the white color, because we have some transparent areas here, and we really want to have this transparent. There shouldn't be a color. But I will at least create another layer which is just for filling gaps. And for example, I will fill this gap here. Take white and fill. Is this white? Yes, this is white. And fill this area here. And now the rest. So we have only a transparent part here on this one, on this area. Okay, now hide the UV layer, and I will create the first an Photoshop image, and this should be called like the name was before, and save this. And I will just replace now my new texture information with the texture before. And yes, I will want to replace it. Okay. And you see now that the texture is now updated here as well in the folder. And when we go here to Blender and to texture paint, there is still my old texture, and we need to refresh or update this texture now. A very easy way to do this is just by pressing Alt R. So you're updating your texture image in the UV editor and you get immediately the texture information of the Photoshop result to your Blender file. Now I need to change again my key here, middle mouse button, and I can navigate now here. And this is pretty cool. Texture paint. I'm in texture painting mode, yes. So you see that we have the shrooms have our violet color here. The tree trunk is now in this beautiful green bluish color, and as well the texture image plane. You see exactly that there's only my texture information on the image. So this is the power of this texture information. So you get very detailed information about a branch, and you can place it now all over on the mesh to get some more detail to this. But keep in mind that every face with an alpha information is taking some performance for your game engine, so don't overdo this. Alright guys, we will start now to paint the tree trunk, and to give it a pattern, so to give it a tree bark texture. So I will start by selecting a darker color. So I do this with the shortcut S, and then you see that this is a little bit different than in Blender 2.7.9. In the old version we have on the left side the pencil tools or the pencil properties, but in Blender 2.8 we have it here on the right side. So this is exactly my drawing tool, and we have here the brush, we have here the color, and here the color pickers, and we can, as well like in the old version, we can add and remove colors, and it is as well the same that it is only selected if you double click it. So if you, for example, select this color, then this color is not selected at all, so you need to click at it directly and then it is selected. So this is the same like in Blender 2.7.9, but we can work with this here in Blender 2.8 as well. For sure, what else do we have here? We have the radius as well, changeable by pressing the button F. So then you get a size. You see now we have 200 pixels, and when we press F again, then we can make it smaller, and yeah, 11 pixels. The strength, this is as well pretty the same like in the old version of Blender. And yes, yeah, we have here as well the curve. The curve is defining my brush stroke, and yeah, for sure we have here the different forms how you want to paint your brush stroke. Yeah, but I want to work with this one because we are working with solid colors, so there shouldn't be a color variation. So I like really for the tone feeling to get really solid colors. So this is, for example, light blue, this is mid-tone blue, this is dark blue, and there shouldn't be a transition. So the strength should be as well here to 100%. So if I'm picking the color now and making this probably darker, something like this maybe, and then I zoom in here and give it a brush stroke like this, and then we can directly paint on our 3D mesh. Okay, so we can directly paint on our 3D mesh, and this will be as well painted here on our UV space, and this is always in sync. And yeah, we can switch between Photoshop and Blender, and this is very good. So okay, I want to give it a darker color first. I want to symbolize some height and depth to the tree bark itself, and I will do this with a lighter color and a darker color. Yeah, and I will just do this for the whole tree trunk itself, and I will fasten up the process because this is a very long painting process and there's nothing special or new for during this process. So see you later. So let's start with the little time lapse here. I recorded this many hours and I was working on this texture about 2 or 3 whole days, and this was really very much work. And you can see here that I created now a video, and this is about the speed of 20 times faster than the basic speed, and it is still 40 minutes long, this video, and we will not discuss the whole video. I will just talk about this process, what I have gained, which experience I gained during this process. And yeah, you see here in the video that I started with the tree bark, and I was just drawing with the darker color the outline of the bark. And maybe you will see this very soon that I was not satisfied with the pattern style, so I started with very tiny spots, and then I created bigger and bigger spots because the spots were too tiny in the beginning. And so I started to reorganize everything a little bit and reduce some lines and overdraw it again and again. And yeah, in the end the finished outlines was more satisfying. And yeah, I was changing my mind during this whole painting process. I started with just drawing lines on the mesh directly, and it is very good that you can paint directly on the 3D mesh, ignoring the UV seams. You don't have to think, where's the UV seam, where I need to care about these UVs. So you see in the UV editor that this is automatically in synchronization with the 3D mesh, and this is very helpful. And so I can export the texture later to Photoshop and can adjust everything again and again, and I can switch between Photoshop and Blender. This was very useful. The whole process took so long and I was so exhausted after this. Now it's before midnight and I'm tired as well, but I need to do this. And yeah, this video is a little bit longer than expected. Yeah, what is now my experience which I gained during the painting process here in Blender? I need to say, yeah, it is cool to paint directly on the 3D mesh, but I still don't like the brush stroke. So this was as well not okay in Blender 2.79. I was wondering if they make the brush stroke better in Blender 2.8. Yeah, but in my opinion there is no improvement in the brush stroke. Yeah, it is cool, but in my opinion there's no improvement in the brush stroke itself. So you can see that there are some very rough lines on this 3D mesh, and yeah, for sure it could be as well possible that the texture resolution is a very important thing in this painting process, but it is not only the texture itself, it is for sure as well the brush stroke. And a very important point is as well that I can't draw with pen pressure. So you know what pen pressure is. So when you press very softly on the graphic tablet, then your brush, your stroke is pretty small. But if you press harder to your tablet, then the stroke is getting bigger and bigger. And this is not working here in Blender. So you just have one single size brush, but you can just change the opacity. So you can change the opacity by pen pressure. And this is not the best solution in my opinion. Maybe there is as well a function in Blender 2.8 as well to adjust the brush stroke, but so far I haven't found a solution, or I didn't find the settings. If you know those kind of settings, please write it into the comments, and I really want to know how to work better in Blender. But yeah, anyway, I will skip now a little bit forward because I'm just drawing this pattern on the tree trunk, and this is taking so long. And you see here now that I am removing some lines and that I'm making the ornaments a little bit bigger, or I just remove here some patterns and making everything looking better in the end. Yeah, then you can draw as well in the UV texture space. This is as well very useful if you don't wanna rotate always the mesh from left to right, so you can just paint the pattern directly into your UV editor. Oh, so yeah, then I started here with the shroom cups, just with the dots. Yeah, the shrooms are pretty easy. I just worked with a very rough basic color with the violet tone here, and then I placed the white dots on the cup. And yeah, I just wanted to add later outline, but I was drawing here on the outer corner as well this dark violet outline, because I wanted to create a texture border between the left and the right, between the bottom part and the upper cup. Yeah, and I show you here now the difference. What is, for example, better in Photoshop than in Blender 2.8 or Blender 2.79. Basically, you can just draw like this in Blender. So you have the opacity, which is changing, but not the brush size. And this is different in Photoshop, because you can control the size by pen pressure and as well the opacity. And this is for me very important, because with my toon textures I don't want to work with opacities basically. And my toon textures I just wanted to work with a solid single color. Sorry, and I don't want it, and I just wanted to draw details or tiny parts or bigger parts with pen pressure. And yeah, just let you know. And I think personally that the brush stroke is cleaner in Photoshop than in Blender. So you see that there's this pixely, that the stroke is very pixely, so it's not as, there's not a good transition between the strokes and the basic color. And so I was reworking every line in Photoshop as well. Yeah, there I was wondering about the bottom side of the shroom cups. I started with blue, but later I switched the color as well. Yeah. Okay, then I am back here in Photoshop. I was AFK here. And yeah, you see now that you can see now that when you drawing in Blender, then you are painting directly onto your UV islands on the texture, but there is a problem, and I want to work with a filter in Photoshop later, and this filter is using the outer part of an color. So I will find all outlines of each color, and I will get a problem when the outline is directly on a UV seam, because then you will see this effect directly onto your UV seam, and this is not good. And this is the reason why I widen these texture areas here, so that we have more texture information additional to the outer space. And yeah, I needed to do this on every single part of the tree, and and maybe now you know that I was working on this texture so long time. And yeah, modeling was pretty fast, so I did everything in 2 or 3 hours, or maybe less, because I was recording and talking as well. But the modeling was pretty fast, and the UV layout as well. But texturing or hand-painted textures will take a lot of time, just to inform you. Yeah, okay, you see now that I was changing the color as well, doing some color corrections, and wanted to make it this red, violet stuff here, this pink. I just wanted to bring it as close to the concept as possible. Yeah, then I was creating the texture border again here. Was reworking the light on this bottom part of the shrooms, then the lines, and was updating this on Blender always, so that I can see what is the result of my doing here. Is the color nice? Is the texture resolution okay? Yeah, and when you draw in your texture, on your 2D texture, then you need to check sometimes the UV or the vertices. Where is this particular vertex? Can I find it on my UV island as well? And then you need to just select it in this 3D mesh and find it on the UV layout, and then you can draw the texture information on your texture. Yeah, there's nothing new so far. I'm just reworking the borders again. You see here that we have this edgy lines. This is the work of Blender. And what I wanted to have in the end is this kind of lines, and this is only possible with Photoshop. And yeah, Blender is making a great job in the beginning, but adjusting everything is better in Photoshop, in my opinion. Okay, let's go further. Yeah, here I'm creating the outlines. So I overdraw the ugly lines I have before, and so I creating this outline, so getting this toony feeling as well. Yeah, this is taking as well sometimes some details, and yeah, it's very important to have pen pressure in size, and this is better in Photoshop. Yeah, and yeah, that I'm reworking the single ornaments here, the single patterns. And important is that the lines I have drawn before on the single color, on the single color base color, are not just lines in the end. So you need to focus on this form. What is this form? This is the base form of the tree bark, and this is the depth. So this is the inner part of the crust, and you need to focus now. This is the main color. This is the bottom color, and in the end, this form is more important than the lines. Yeah, and now I started to draw details to these forms. And now, this is a very important point of development. I added the third color to my texture. And the third color is the height color, or the detail color. And I giving each texture element, or each form here, I give this outline and maybe some lines as well, so that I getting the tree bark texture. And this makes such a huge difference to the texture. Yeah, and maybe this doesn't look very time consuming, but in the end I was working so many hours on this kind of detail. And I will fast this up now a little bit, because you see that this is taking for the whole texture a very long time. Wow guys, I really underestimated the amount of work of this bark texture. So I guess I draw about 8 to 10 hours only for all of this texture information. So all these highlights to get this barky look here. And for sure this toony look. I skipped a lot of time in this video by drawing this, because yeah, it wouldn't be useful for you to show you a time lapse of 10 hours of this here. So this should be a tutorial for sure. There's only some parts left, so this is really close to be finished. You see that I have drawn here in some parts a yellow line. I want to create a transition to this green-blue as well. So I will choose a soft brush, and I want to adjust here my branch with the opacity. So I start with this one. There's nothing special to do. I just select the UVs which are working for this. Choose a soft brush here, soft round opacity brush, and for sure I need the yellow color. Pick this and just draw it here. So this is done. I will do the same here on this one here. Bam. So this should be done now as well. And there's one left. This one as well. Choose the UV and give it a transition. So, and the last thing here is now that the branch. The branch need to be drawn with a sharp brush so that I can draw all those tiny details. And oh, wrong color. And I will give it now some nice details. For example, that the opacity is going to this one. So maybe not this thickness of the branch, then here the same, not too thick. I did this very fast with a round hard brush, but now I want to make it with a greater amount of detail. I think this is good. I will save this now and save this, overwrite it, yes, go to Blender, go to UV space and press Alt R to update the texture. Oh, and I need to change my Wacom driver. And you see now that there is this updated texture, and everything looks very good in my opinion. So I have everywhere the tree bark texture, and this looks really nice with all the details here now. And the only part what I want to change, or what should be changed, is probably a transition. Or should I make a transition or not? Yes, here on this part. You see that I haven't a good transition here, and I want to do this now. I need to go to object mode, select the needed object, and now I can directly draw on my texture again. So need to hide the UV cuts. The only thing is should I use other brush style? For example, overlay. I need to test this because this makes different colors and I want to have different colors in the end on this part here, because we are changing the color from this part to this yellow part, and I want to run this out. And so add would be a good way to do this. Here. So bring this back to mix so that we can just draw with our original color and bring those colors together. Here and here. Okay, I will end this here. So, do we need this color, this dark color here as well? Maybe just a little bit, and then it is fine. I bring some irregular transitions here so that there is a better pattern. There shouldn't be this completely soft pattern, so I will make this irregular so it's not just this soft transition. There I made not a good job with this transition. I thought this would be better. This is this part here, so this should be actually be better. You see that this isn't good enough, and now I need to adjust this again. But yes, it should be better now. Maybe some soft some more lines here. So I need to change those parts here on this. Okay, I'm happy with the texture now. What do you think about this? there's only one step before it's finished. I will save this image now. Go back to Photoshop. Need to change here my front button to additional key and space bar. And you see that I have created here my tree bark and some details here on the shroom cups. So I have different layers, but if you work with texture painting tool, then you get only one single layer. This is actual bad. If you have a good layer control, then you can control the texture information on each layer. For example, I just worked now on the tree bark, so I don't need to oh, I forgot this. This is important information as well. So I need to duplicate this, but we'll hide this this group now, and I can merge those two layers because we got the new information now, and I rename it so we got the correct name on this. Now I am activating my group, and I added here the new texture from Blender, and because I want to have a control of my cup layers, and the only change is here the yellow parts. There isn't much difference because it's only this one single object here. So I want to create a mask and just select this texture area here. Then I go to select inverse, so this is accepted from the whole, and I will press Ctrl Delete, so only the white part is visible and the black part is invisible, and so I can control only this one single area of the texture, and this is fine. So I have still control of the rest of the other layers, and this is just a texture addition to the other part. So I forgot only this area here, and go to my tree bark texture, selecting the color, selecting my UV area here, selecting a soft brush because I forgot it, and now it should work. Perfect. Everything is prepared, and I am happy with the result now. And now this is just my personal trick how to get more this toony feeling of this texture. I will give this now a new layer, a new group, and call this work in progress. So if I come back to the texture, I can always get back to the whip folder and adjust the single layers. But now I have as well the control about all layers at the same time, and I will copy this now. And merge it. So select everything and merge the whole layer. So I have 2 times the same result, but this layer will be now will get a filter, and the filter is called or is fine to stylize. And in stylize there is this find edges filter, and with this filter the color information is changed to just outlines, find edges. And this looks now maybe a little bit weird, but you see the difference. On each hard edge is a new stroke, and this stroke have a different color, because this depends on which color it has in the original layer. And personally, sometimes it's good to have this, but I will show you now what is my basic next step. And I bring the layer style to multiply, and you see now that there is this outline, or this new stroke is added or multiply to the original texture layer. And by adding this gives it really this outline or this stroke. And in my opinion, we got a toony characteristic texture. Because what is toon actually? A toon is basically or mainly an outline with a colored face, and there is basically no shading or any kind of structure or color difference. And so we work with outline and with the basic color, but this is pretty heavy, and I think this have a very interesting look, but this is too much. So I bring the opacity to something around 50%, and so it gets softer, but we still have the stroke. And now look at the difference, and I really enjoy this. So we have this contrast now in the texture, and but without it will look some kind of boring. And this filter gives it really an interesting shape or interesting structure. And before we export this now to Blender, I need to care about this area here, because we have an opacity part here, so this should be 100% zero texture information. But by the function multiply, and there is this white area which is multiplied to 0, and so we get an white foggy area here. And to avoid this, I just make this a clipping mask. So press Alt, and between those two layers, then there's this new symbol coming up, and just make a left click, so you created a clipping mask. And you see, without this, there is this white foggy texture area around this. And making this a clipping mask, I remove this, and everything is perfect. So save this as PNG. Yes. Go back to Blender. Bring my vacuum button to middle mouse button. And now look at the difference. This is the old version of my texture, and by assigning now the new texture, this gives it a completely different look, and I really love this. So what do you think about this filter or this method? Do you like it, or do you have a different method how to create your toon texture? Painting process is finished, and I do really the last adjustments on our 3D mesh now. I will change now here to object mode. You see that I have still some elements which are not connected and I want to merge everything. But a very important thing is here, my texture plane. I want to activate now backface culling. Usually in Blender 2.7.9 it was by pressing N. You could find this function on the right side. But in Blender 2.8 this is a little bit different. You need to click here on the right top corner on shading, and there is the option backface culling. And when you're activating this, then you see that this is the back side of this face or of this plane, and this is the top side. But I need to do some adjustments before I flip the normals to the other side. You see that we have this area or this amount of no texture information. There's really no texture information on this face, and I want to reduce this a little bit so that we make it more performant. Oops, sorry. Go now to edit mode and press 1 for the vertex selection mode. And now I can press double G to move the vertex along the edge. But we have now one problem. There is my texture information which is influenced by my doing here. So basically in Blender 2.7.9 we have on the left side our transformation or my adjusting tool palette. But now in Blender this is here on the bottom side. You can click this and just press or enable correct UVs. And then the texture information should stay on its position, and I can move the geometry around and this will stay where it should be. So okay, bring them into position, and what I wanted to do now is adding here an edge and bring them in. So I do this to reduce the transparent faces. So really we don't need this amount of transparency, we just need some single parts, and it's better to reduce all of this here. I will bring this as well up here, and okay, and I will keep those vertices or those transparent areas because yeah, I can't really reduce them without a big addition of vertices. So okay, this is fine. When you're in vertex mode, then you can select shade smooth. You need to switch to face mode and then press right click, and then you have here the option shade smooth. Now our corners are a bit better. It's not that hard edgy thing here, and now everything is okay. I am in object mode now, press Shift D to duplicate this, and I want to move it slightly to the bottom part. Then I go again to edit mode, select here mesh, normals and flip normals. And now the texture information is exactly on the bottom part as well, but you have two different objects, and I select them both and press Ctrl J to merge them. Now we have one single object, and the backface culling is as well working. And if you wanna, you can place this this branch now on several parts on your tree as well. And I will do this. I really wanna do this. So I may press Shift D again and place them probably. Where should I place this? I need to adjust the origin again. So go in edit mode, select my vertex here on the end of this branch and press Shift S and bring cursor to selected. Okay, now you have the 3D cursor now on this position, and basically in Blender 2.79 I would press now Ctrl Shift Alt C to set the origin to my 3D cursor, but this shortcut is not working in Blender 2.8, so I need to find here to go to Object and set origin geometry to 3D cursor. So this is done now. Now I want to press snap to the faces and I select, yeah, faces is good. And when I press G now, I select it, I should snap to my geometry. So I will rotate this, and where should this be in the end? Probably something like this. Is this big enough, or should we make it smaller? This is too big, so I make it smaller. Put it into this object. Okay. So then I want to have another one, basically somewhere here. And then that's it. Put it into this. Looks okay. And maybe one last branch to this side here. And I just want to rotate this a little bit and put it into this face, into this mesh as well. Okay, so this looks pretty okay to me now. I select now everything and press Ctrl J, and now everything is merged again at one single object. And the only thing I wanted to do now is to combine the vertices. So I go to edit mode, select everything, and now go to mesh, clean up, and remove doubles. And you have 96 vertices reduced. This is really a lot. Okay, so one last thing. Stay in object mode, in edit mode, and go to face selection mode and press now, right click, shade smooth. And this is important because I have forgotten to smooth those little tiny things here. Okay, it is perfect now. My origin is on the bottom part, it is 0. Everything is merged, I have a good nice texture, and now it is ready to export this. I will save this now and press File, Export FBX. And usually I was pressing in this toolbar here several options, like in Blender 2.79 I press only selected objects, I press mesh and experimental apply transform, because in Unity there is a strange behavior of scale if you're not activating this one. So I will overwrite this test FBX and export it. And when we go now to Unity, I have prepared my environment a little bit for my tree. And I will go now to my folder, and here is the FBX. And we have here in my project, I have the tree folder, and I just drag and drop this FBX to Unity. Now it is here, and the only thing I want to do is the materials. I don't want to import any materials because I will do this with my own thing. And now we have here this 3D object. I just drag and drop it here to Unity. Scale is perfect. And I have prepared my material or my shader. This is created for the Cortex game itself, so this is our own shader, and I will drag and drop this shader now on our tree. You see that the texture isn't finished so far because we need to refresh this as well. I go to the folder where the texture should be in the end, and we have several textures so far here, and I will just drag and drop my new texture and put it into the new folder, and I will just overwrite it. Yes. And it should be working now pretty well. The shader is not correct right now because I need to do some adjustments on the settings, but I want to have this slightly moving top of the tree because it is, the wind should blow a little bit, and so the tree is moving very slightly. So we pressed play now, and we have our little character, and we have our tree here on this side, and this looks pretty okay with the shader to the environment. This looks very nice. The size is maybe a little bit too small. I want to make it bigger, so we have some thing here, and from here, from this position, we can see pretty clearly our whole object, and this fits very good to our environment in my opinion. This looks nice, and I like all these roots, and the texture is as well pretty sharp, so the texture resolution is okay. I just need to do a glow map, but this will be not part of this tutorial. Alright guys, this is the end of my tutorial. Now you see that we created our 3D vegetation shroom tree and the texture. The texture was a very long task, and you see that this tutorial was a little bit extra time included. So thank you very much for watching. If you like this video tutorial, give us a like and follow to our YouTube channel. If you're interested to Cortex and everything what we are doing, then subscribe to our weekly newsletter. There you get all the video tutorials and the information about Cortex weekly. We loved creating tutorials and Cortex, but we need your help as well. So become our Patreon and help us to help you. Till the next time, cheers!